And one club that is certainly looking interesting at the moment is Manchester United. Of course, Ineos are in. Still decisions to be made on the manager. Talk today of bids going in for some Portuguese players. But I wanted to start off with a question to you about your understanding of the latest with Erik ten Hag. Is he staying? Is he going? And when are we likely to find out?
Yeah, I think everyone wants clarity, but the review is ongoing, and therefore Manchester United fans have to be patient. I know that an easy he's staying or he's going would be nice, especially for social media. But the reality is this end of season review was planned. And my understanding pretty consistently was always that it would happen, then a determination would be made. And everything Manchester United were doing whilst the season was ongoing was just succession planning. And for those that are unaware, the difference is succession planning is making sure that you've got everything in order in case you need to make a change, but it's not always a clue that you definitively will make a change. So you're running data, you're having internal discussions, you're finding out who might be available on the market, you're getting a list of about 10, even a dozen, but you're not interviewing. And Manchester United will be respectful to Ten Hag if he goes, and they won't have pre-lined anyone up. They'll have just done their due diligence, so there's not managerial limbo. And this is what all well-run clubs do. So the review with Ten Hag, I'm told, is a 4 or 5 day process, and therefore it's coming to its final stages. So clarity is expected sooner rather than later. But Ten Hag, as of this morning, still in the dark. Mauricio Pochettino, you may remember, was in the dark and ended up going. I think most managers feel like if they're going to stay, they have to be told quickly. So there's an urgency to conclude this process. But nothing was set in stone to my knowledge before the FA Cup final. And now we're going to have to be patient because this new Manchester United-led era under Sir Jim Ratcliffe is not about scapegoating managers, whether they stay or go. It's not about making cutthroat and rash decisions. And I think we've seen that in the manner in which they've hired everyone so far. First of all, Omar Barada, then a little gap, then going for Dan Ashworth, then a little gap, then Jason Wilcox, and today Toby Craig, who used to be at Chelsea, is coming in as the Chief Communications Officer, another fantastic hire who's worked with Barada before at Manchester City. So they're building foundations and strategy from the top down, and that's why they're trying to determine, is it Ten Hag? Or actually, if we're building something and it's not even started, then can he benefit from that? And is that different to what Ten Hag has had to deal with before we came in? So all these things are being discussed. And as I reported last week, Jean-Claude Blanc, I'm told, is making the argument as part of a healthy debate that Ten Hag should stay. And Sir Dave Brailsford is putting information forwards that he should go. And that doesn't mean that each of them are at war or at odds. It means as part of a healthy appraisal or review, both sides are being presented. Everybody is having a say, and then they will make a final determination. And as of this morning, we don't yet know. And I don't think there's anything wrong as a journalist with saying we don't yet know, because if Manchester United don't yet know, then I personally think it's irresponsible journalism to start second guessing a decision or hinting at which way the club might be leaning before the review is even complete. But hopefully we'll get clarity soon. And obviously I'll update you when I hear more.
What's really interesting for me is what you just said there about Brailsford and Blanc essentially playing devil's advocate, arguing either side. I think because we live in such a polarized world, people interpreted that news when it came out as they're fighting, they're arguing, we're a mess, it's all crazy. Sometimes you don't even have to believe in something, but you can still push that argument because you have to be sure of your decisions. As the host of the Football Terrace, now I'm not making decisions on shows. I sometimes ask questions, not because I believe in the potential outcome of the debate, but I want the debate to be had, if that makes sense. I might ask someone, oh, what do you think about keeping Ten Hag? People say, well, so you're saying you want him? No, it's a question. And I think for me, we live in an era where asking questions is sometimes taken as a statement. So I'm really happy to hear this because I think it's what Man United need. I agree. I think we're building a really good foundation. The announcement today of the new communications officer as well, not going to be focusing on brand content, sponsorships and marketing. It's going to be based around football, which I think for years, people like myself have said that most of our sort of key decision makers at the club have had a mindset more on marketing and business than football, which has always been a problem for me. So I'm really happy to hear that, and we'll find out about Ten Hag when we find out. In terms of the transfers, there's a number of players that we are linked to. What's the latest in relation to Man United? Because we've seen names like Branthwaite, we've seen Elise. Today, there's reports out of Portugal that a bid has gone in for João Neves. What's your understanding of the latest goings on at Manchester United in terms of transfers, Ben?
Well, I've seen the João Neves news, and it's not something that I've stood up. Manchester United don't have 50 plus million at this point to just put down. The budget is definitely going to be defined by who leaves the football club. Of course, they have cleared up some wage bill space with Rafael Varane and Anthony Martial going at the end of the season. But how Manchester United move will be a chain reaction to who departs. In other words, if it's Casemiro to Saudi, possibly Christian Eriksen, midfield becomes a big priority. If it was to be Harry Maguire, even though he's earned his time at Manchester United and been excellent, but because of age, if the right offer comes in, we know that West Ham had that historical interest, then you suddenly start looking at centre-back. And because Rafael Varane has already gone, I think that's a big area of priority, because we know that Manchester United were thin towards the end of the season, which is why Casemiro had to go and play at centre-back. But beyond midfield and centre-back, they want a young left-back, and Milos Kirkos at Bournemouth, along with Chelsea. That's one to potentially watch. And of course, there's been this feeling since day one of the Ratcliffe-led sporting regime that Michael Elise is a player that Manchester United may move for. And I think that's accurate to my knowledge, in the sense that he was approved by the new sporting-led regime and already on the list under John Murtough and the old regime as well. So that tells you that there's some kind of consensus, if you like, between, at top level, the Glazers and Ratcliffe. But the oddity about Elise is that although he is a priority target, he's not necessarily in the number one priority position. So Manchester United may strengthen elsewhere positionally because they feel it's more pressing, and then wait and see whether or not they've got the funds to go in for Elise later in the window. And I don't think they're going to have to worry about Elise going anywhere today, tomorrow, because he's an overthinker from what people say about the player. So just because maybe Chelsea or Newcastle enter into the race for Elise, there'll be no panic. He'll wait, he'll assess, and that may come later in the window, which is good news for Manchester United because they may have the funds by then. But Elise is going to cost somewhere in the region of 60 to 65 million through a complicated release clause. And I still understand that Manchester United are prioritising some form of more traditional striker, then looking at centre-back. And there is concrete substance to the Jared Branthwaite links, but the price might be prohibitive. And then in midfield, we're going to have to wait and see, depending on moving parts. If they get good money for Casemiro, they may be able to bring in a replacement. And Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall is one name that I've mentioned in the past and is on Manchester United's radar and is cheaper than some of the other names out there. And Brighton are still in the mix for him as well. So it's going to be busy, but the first priority for Manchester United is to make sure that they get enough outgoings money in to not have PSR concerns, and then to free up enough budget to move in the market. Because as of now, they're probably only looking at a maximum of 70 or 80 million that they would be comfortable spending without worrying about the financial consequences.
Which makes a lot of sense. And Man United, we've at times had a bloated squad. We have for many, many years not gotten rid of players that are either not good enough or didn't want to be there. And it becomes an ongoing problem for whoever the manager is. That's one area where I've always felt sorry for most of our coaches. And I've always looked at the way we've operated as well. You know, you can go back as far as Jose, when he obviously wanted Pogba and Martial to be gone. And that was the board saying, no, you're keeping them. Phil Jones being around. And it isn't that these people are bad individuals or anything along those lines, but it's just managers, you've seen Pep talk about this and Klopp talk about it. They want their squad. They want the players that want to be there and players they want. They don't even like, a lot of managers don't even like injured players being around the training ground for some reason. So I totally understand why that's important for us. On Elise, there's every day you see reports, Chelsea or Man United, Chelsea or Man United. If both go in for him, to say both clubs have got the money, if both go in for him, what's your understanding of Elise's preference?
Well, as I say, he's a thinker, so the preference can change based upon the deal. And we know that Chelsea have got the history, but Manchester United and Elise is one to watch, because I think the player likes the idea of going to Old Trafford in theory. But naturally, Chelsea may have a longer term deal, more incentive driven package, and might be able to offer a higher wage too, even though Manchester United, by winning the FA Cup, have got Europa League football. I think the wage structure at United is going to be reined in even more so under Ratcliffe compared to in years gone by, whereas Chelsea are offering the world to players in terms of length and incentives, but the base wage is actually lower. And Tosin, if Chelsea get that over the line, is a good example. You may read reports out there that say Chelsea are offering 150,000 a week or more, and Newcastle were offering closer to 120,000 a week. But my understanding is that Chelsea simply matched Newcastle's offer, but they said it's a longer term contract with security. It's a ton of games because we've got UEFA Europa Conference League, Club World Cup, and the domestic cups. And if you do well, then your wage can rise significantly. And players often back their ability to come in at a relatively modest Premier League wage, albeit by Chelsea standards, which is still incredibly lucrative, but then do well and it skyrockets, whereas Newcastle can't do that. So the terms offered to Elise, if both clubs come in, will be an influencing factor that people are not considering. And there will likely be completely different kinds of packages, unlike the Tosin deal. Chelsea would say to Elise, like they did 12 months ago, it's a long-term contract, at least 5 years. It's heavily incentive driven. It's a big spike if we qualify for Champions League. It's a big spike if you hit your personal goals. It's a big spike if you hit a certain number of appearances. Whereas from Manchester United's point of view, even though they've historically had this increase or decrease based on Champions League football, there's not as much reward-driven stuff because players have walked into Old Trafford and they just expect big money. And Manchester United may not be able to match Chelsea's overall package as a result, because unlike in the old regime, they're trying to move away from this 250k or more a week type wages to half of their senior squad. So Elise, given what he's on at Crystal Palace, even though it increased with his renewal, might not be getting anywhere close to 200k at Manchester United, and therefore may have to be patient if he wants to move there and earn that kind of money. So financially speaking, Chelsea are probably going to be able to present a better package, but I'm told that sentimentally speaking, if it was only down to heart and not head, then Elise would pick Manchester United over Chelsea. That is my understanding. But heart won't be the only consideration. And both clubs have to come in for the player ultimately first. And we're not yet at that scenario.
Sounds exciting. I'm already sitting there. I want him as a Man United fan. But Chelsea do Chelsea things in the transfer window. But it does feel like it's going to be... If I take myself out of the equation as a Man United fan, it sounds like it could end up being a really nice transfer battle. And as I said many times, I view the transfer window as the Vatican within Rome. I feel like it's a ring-fenced event for me away from football, even though it's sort of connected in that way. Viewers, let us know what you think and feel. Remember, any questions you've got for Ben, send them in. Member chats and super chats, we will prioritize. If Ben has information, he'll tell us. If he doesn't, he'll tell us as well. But look, lots going on at Manchester United, as mentioned. I think there's a lot to wait for. Not necessarily the manager, because what I like about the way we're structuring things is that the club are going to be picking the style of play and the players. So you can actually start work on players now. You don't necessarily need the manager in place, which for me is the perfect model. I think it's what's needed in the modern day world. Lots going on over there.